I was holding a tin cup of coffee outside my mountain base camp when Emma Wilson looked up from the tent doorway with a field tablet in her hand and asked if the storm would give her enough time to save her survey contract. Behind her, the ridgeline had gone the color of wet iron. The morning had started too clear, the way bad mountain weather sometimes does. Blue sky over snow-striped peaks, sunlight on the fir trees, a cold wind moving down through the valley with that sharp pine and static taste that always made the hair on my arms lift before the instruments confirmed anything. My handheld Kestrel monitor hung from a cord around my neck. The barometric pressure had dropped another 2 millibars in 3 minutes. My radar feed on the tough book inside the command truck showed a red and purple wall tightening over the western pass. The drainage basin below camp was already dark with runoff, even before the main band hit. Emma sat at the open flap of her three-season tent, one knee braced against a black Pelican case, her tablet balanced on top. She wore a tan cap, a lightweight field shirt over a plain hiking top, olive field shorts, and mud-streaked boots. Practical for the morning heat. Useless for the temperature drop coming in behind the front. A stainless mug steamed between her hands. A second ago, she had looked calm. Then the tablet chirped. Now she looked like someone who had just watched a clock become a weapon. "How much time?" she asked again. I set my coffee on the folding table beside the radar console. Before rain or before the basin floods? Her eyes moved to the shallow ground below the tent. That is a terrible distinction. It is the one that matters. I stepped closer but stopped outside the tent line. No crowding. No grabbing gear. No turning the warning into another man taking over her space. "Henry Walker," I said. "I run the mobile meteorological unit on the Limestone Ridge. Ranger Cooper asked me to monitor this sector because the forecast models missed a localized pressure inversion over the pass." She looked at the Kestrel, then at the antenna mast behind my truck. "You're the storm chaser." Meteorologist, when forms are involved. "I'm Emma Wilson, independent ecological surveyor." She lifted the tablet. Apex Land Corp hired me to run baseline soil and canopy light data before they file their development proposal. They have been trying to replace independent surveyors with their cheaper in-house team for months. If I miss the first transmission deadline, they void my contract and say I failed access compliance. There it was. Why she was here. Not adventure. Not fresh air. A contract coordinate. A corporate deadline. A company waiting for a weather excuse to fire the independent expert standing in front of me. "What deadline?" I asked. 8 tomorrow morning. She tapped the screen. "Sensor grid has to stay near this coordinate long enough to complete the baseline set. If I move everything now, Apex calls it non-compliant." I looked down at the drainage basin. A thin thread of water was already cutting through the low grass. "You have two separate problems," I said. "Apex wants your contract to fail. The storm wants your tent in the creek." Her mouth tightened. "My forecast said light showers until tomorrow evening. The public forecast is wrong." I pointed to the sky, where the clean blue had vanished behind a boiling shelf cloud. "That basin floods first. Your tent goes next. Your sensors might survive if they're waterproofed. You won't like what happens if you stay in that low ground." She stood, leaving the tablet on the case. Her eyes flicked toward the sensor flags staked in the clearing. "So what are my options?" "Good." She asked for options. I gave them. "You can move to the ridge with me and keep control of your equipment. We patch your receiver through my truck, monitor the sensors remotely, and use my satellite uplink for transmission. Or we radio Ranger Jack Cooper from my truck and wait here for an official evacuation call. But this basin floods first, and the access road below us washes out within the hour." She studied me for 3 full seconds. Not helpless. Assessing. A woman who had spent too much of her professional life, proving she was not reckless, now had to decide whether moving looked like failure. I took the radio from my belt and switched channels. Ranger Station. Walker Base to Cooper. Static snapped once. Then Jack Cooper's voice came through. "Cooper here. Tell me you're seeing the same pressure cliff I am." "I'm seeing worse. Drainage basin east of my ridge has an ecological survey team on site. 1 person. Equipment deployed. I'm recommending immediate relocation to high ground." Emma's shoulders shifted when she heard Jack confirm it. "Not trust yet. Evidence." Jack answered. "Confirmed. County road crew just reported water over the lower crossing. If she can move with you, move her. I'll log the advisory and prepare a weather verification report." Copy. I clipped the radio back to my belt. "Your call," I said. Emma looked at her tent, then at the sensor flags, then at the ridge behind my command truck. "My sensors stay transmitting?" If the cases are rated the way they look, yes. We'll retrieve them when the water drops. And I carry the optics case. 35, that belongs to you. She nodded once. Then we move. We had 27 minutes before the first hard rain. Emma collapsed the tent faster than most weekend campers could find the zipper. She stripped the poles, folded the rainfly, sealed the tablet in a dry bag, and checked each sensor case by serial number before she handed anything toward my truck. I noticed the way she worked, not because of how she looked, because she did not waste motion. The wind snapped the tent fabric sideways. She caught it with one knee, rolled it tight, and clipped the strap without looking down. I stopped tightening the tripod clamp and watched the strap click shut. Competent, focused, furious at the weather, not afraid of it. Then, the first raindrop hit the pelican case hard enough to sound like a thrown pebble. Time, I said. Emma lifted the case with both hands. I took the heavier gear crate, and we climbed. The ridge path was slick, with pine needles and loose stone. The wind came in bursts now, bending the trees and driving cold air under my collar. Halfway up, Emma's boot slid on mud. She caught herself against a tree root before I reached her. I'm fine, she said. I saw. You were going to help. I was going to make sure the case didn't take you downhill. She looked at the case in her hand, then huffed one short laugh. Priorities. Expensive optics. Fair. By the time we reached base camp, the rain was moving sideways. My setup sat on a limestone shelf above the basin. One four-season geodesic dome, steel core tension lines, a command truck with roof-mounted satellite dish, 2 antenna masts, and enough guy lines to make careless walking a legal concern. I opened the dome door and stepped back. Inside. You keep the case with you. Emma crossed the threshold. I followed, sealed the storm flap, and clipped the inner zipper down. The roar became a heavy, muffled pressure against the fabric. Inside, warm lantern light struck the organized chaos of a working storm camp. Radar screens, battery packs, anchored cots, a vented stove, coil racks, waterproof notebooks, and a folding table bolted to the floor frame. Emma set the pelican case under the table and looked around. This is not a tent. This is an argument with the weather. Do you usually win? Only when I respect the opposition. Her phone buzzed. No service. She checked anyway, then looked at me. If Apex can't reach me, they'll say, I went dark. We send an advisory from my SAT terminal before the bandwidth drops. I turned the rugged laptop toward her, but did not touch her tablet. Type what you want them to have. Short. Timestamped. Include Ranger Cooper's weather advisory reference. She sat immediately. No argument. No panic, she wrote. Field team relocated to high ground under documented severe weather advisory. Sensor grid remains active at required coordinates. Initial transmission deadline remains on schedule, pending weather-safe uplink. I read it once. Add that you retain control of original data. She added the line. I routed the message through the SAT terminal, copied Ranger Jack, and sent. At unsprezeche. A. M. 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 Before the valley became a wall of water, Apex received her first notice. Then the storm hit for real. The dome flexed under the gusts, but the anchors held. Rain struck the fly in sheets. Small hail rattled across the roof, like gravel poured over metal. The stove clicked and warmed the air slowly. Emma opened her Pelican case. Inside, everything had its place. Telemetry receiver, backup drives, field notes in waterproof sleeves, lens filters, soil probes, 2 coiled copper leads, and a compact solar battery wrapped in foam. She laid each item on the table with care. I brought over a fleece-lined field jacket from my gear trunk and hung it on the back of the chair beside her. Temperatures dropping, I said. Temperatures. Use it if you need. She looked at the jacket. Then, at me. You're not handing it to me. No, because you think I'll take it better if it's my choice. Yes, a small smile touched her face. You're annoyingly observant. I've been called worse by cloud formations. She put the jacket on. It was too large, but the shiver in her shoulders stopped within a minute. On the radar screen, the main band curled over the valley. Emma plugged her telemetry receiver into my auxiliary port. The signal blinked twice, then stabilized. She leaned closer. Sensor 1, active. 2, active. 3, active. Her hand moved across the keyboard. Soil moisture is climbing fast, but the cases are sealed. Good. She glanced at the radar. How long are we locked down? Minimum 36 hours, 48 if the lower road fails. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Apex won't wait. 48 hours. No. But your first packet still goes at 8. If they play fair? Do they? She looked at the screen. No. The answer had barely left her mouth when the satellite phone chimed. Apex Land Corp. Emma took the handset, pressed speaker, and placed it on the table between us. Wilson. The man on the line did not introduce himself. His tone had the flat polish of someone reading policy as a threat. Ms. Wilson, due to weather-related liability acceleration, Apex is moving the initial transmission deadline to 4:00 A. Failure to transmit by that time will be treated as breach under emergency access terms. Emma's eyes narrowed. That clause applies when my delay creates site liability. My sensors are live at the approved coordinates. The amended deadline stands. You know the storm is blocking broadband. That is why the acceleration is necessary. Bad faith, dressed in safety language. Emma's hand tightened on the edge of the table. I will transmit by 4:00 A.M., she said. We will require full spectral analysis, raw sensor values, and time-stamped location proof. The line went dead. For a second, only the storm spoke. Then Emma set the handset down. They know exactly what they're doing. Yes. She turned to her receiver. The full spectral packet is over 3 gigabytes. Shortwave burst won't handle it. Satellite will. She looked at the radar. The dish can punch through that, not during heavy moisture. But there is a dry slot moving through around 3:15, 12 minutes. Maybe 15. Not enough for an automated lock and transfer. Correct. Her eyes moved to the roof of the command truck outside. No, I didn't say anything yet. You looked at the truck. The dish motor iced during the hail burst. Manual alignment from the roof turret can hold a cleaner line. She stood. Absolutely not. I raised one hand. Not to stop her. To slow the room. We do this with rules. Harness. Primary anchor. Jack aware by radio. Exposure limit. 8 minutes per attempt. Abort if gusts exceed 75, or if you lose signal for more than 30 seconds. You call abort. Not me. That changed her expression. You'd let me call it? You're the transfer operator. You see the packet. You watch signal stability. You call abort if the data or the wind makes it unsafe. She looked at the radar again. Then, at the compressed file on her screen, I can strip non-essential metadata, compress the images, and split the packet into verified sections. If the first section fails, I don't have to restart the whole transfer. Good, and if you fall, I'm tethered. That was not comforting. It was accurate. She stared at me. A strand of hair slipped across her cheek. I curled my hand around my coffee mug and turned back to the radar screen. We have 2 hours to prepare, I said. Use them. She exhaled once through her nose. Then sat. Fine, but I call abort. Yes, and Ranger Cooper stays on radio. Yes, and if the wind crosses your threshold, you come down even if the packet is halfway through. Yes, she opened the compression software. Then stop talking and get your harness. Et. Tree. Opt. M. Ranger Jack's voice crackled through the radio. Walker, Cooper here. Ridge gusts at 62, spikes to 68. Lower crossing is gone. County road closed. You are officially locked in. Copy, I said. Attempting manual sat alignment during dry slot. 8-minute exposure limit. Surveyor Wilson controls abort from base. Jack was silent for half a beat. Then you always make my reports interesting. Document it cleanly. Already logging. Emma sat at the table with headphones over one ear, laptop open, transfer queue ready. The lantern threw gold light across her face. No softness now, only focus. She gave me a thumbs up. I clipped the harness to the primary line, Checked the carabiner gate, checked it again, then opened the storm door. Wind hit like a hard shove. The rain had thinned, but ice still rode inside it. I crossed to the truck with my center low, boots grinding into wet stone. The tether dragged behind me. The dish turret above the command cab was rimmed in white. I climbed the rear ladder. Every rung burned cold through my gloves. At the top, I clipped into the secondary anchor and braced one knee against the roof rack. "On turret," I said into the throat mic. Emma answered immediately. "I have signal baseline at 12%. Waiting." I sprayed the gear housing with de-icer, set the wrench into the manual crank, and waited for the sky to shift. The dry slot arrived like someone had loosened a fist. Rain softened. Static. Dropped in my earpiece. Signal climbed to 28. "Starting alignment," I said. "Next." The crank resisted, then broke free with a metallic crack. I turned slowly, watching the wrist meter. 40. 57. 69. "Signal improving," Emma said. "Hold." When you hit 80, a gust hit the side of the truck. The roof shifted under my boots. I locked one elbow around the support strut and held the crank. 76. 81. "Mark," I said. "Transfer 1 started," Emma replied. 10%. The wind clawed at the dish. The crank trembled under my gloves. I kept my eyes on the meter and my breathing slow. 26%, she said. "Checksum stable." Jack came over the radio. "Gust spike at 70. Emma's voice sharpened. "Henry, threshold is 75. I hear it." The dish tried to yaw left. I corrected half a degree. "Signal dip to 64. Signal drop," Emma said. "Recover in 10 seconds or I abort." Copy. I shifted my weight, tightened the crank, and brought the dish back. 72. 79. 82. "Recovered," she said. 48%. 1. My shoulders burned. Cold crept under my cuffs. The mountain roared like it wanted the last word. It did not get it. 70%, Emma said. "Second." "Packet queued," Jack said. "Wind easing." 61. "Keep going," Emma said. Not pleading. Commanding. Good. 92. 98. "Transfer complete. Apex receipt generated." I held the dish 5 seconds longer while she verified. "Direct receipt from Apex server," she said. Her voice changed. Not softer, stronger. "Timestamp?" Tress. 24. A.M. Packet accepted. I locked the turret, clipped the crank, and climbed down before the next band hit. When I came back through the storm door, I was covered in sleet and mud. Emma stood by the stove with a wool blanket folded over one arm. She did not step into my space. She set the blanket on the chair beside me, then stepped back toward the stove and poured coffee into a tin cup. "Sit," she said. "I need to log." "Ranger Jack is logging." "I am logging." "You are sitting for 90 seconds. I sat. The chair creaked under wet gear. She handed me the coffee. Her hands were steady now. "Apex sent direct receipt," she said. "But I forwarded it to Jack and copied my contract file before they can pretend it didn't happen." I wrapped both hands around the cup. "That was your win. You held the dish. You hit send." She looked at the radar screen, then at the storm-dark tent wall. "And I called abort threshold." "Yes, you listened." "Yes," she nodded once, as if filing that somewhere important. Then she sat across from me with her own cup, steam rising between us. For the first time all night, the silence in the dome did not feel like waiting for something to break. It felt like shelter. By late afternoon, the storm had moved east. The valley below looked rearranged. The basin where Emma had started her tent had become a wide brown sheet of moving water. The place where her sleeping bag would have been was under 8 inches of runoff. A broken branch floated past the sensor flags. Emma stood beside me on the ridge, wearing my field jacket over her own shirt, tablet in hand. She did not say anything. She took a photo, then another. Documentation first. Emotion after. "Jack will need those," I said. "I know." We spent 2 hours retrieving sensors, once the water dropped enough to cross safely. I wore chest waders. Emma used a long hook pole and called out case numbers from the bank. One sensor had shifted 30 feet downstream, but was still transmitting. Another was half buried in silt. The third sat exactly where she had placed it, stubborn as a nail. By 5, we reached the ranger station. Ranger Jack Cooper met us on the porch with a clipboard, rain jacket, and the tired satisfaction of a man whose warnings had been ignored by no one important. He handed Emma a signed weather verification report. Severe weather advisory, road closure, flash flood confirmation, and manual transmission witness log, he said. If Apex tries to call this noncompliance, they can argue with my badge and 3 pages of timestamps. Emma took the report carefully. This helps. It should do more than help, Jack said. It should make their lawyer sigh. I looked at him. Jack smiled. I enjoy professional goals. Emma slid the report into a waterproof sleeve beside the Apex receipt. Her phone buzzed as soon as we reached the parking lot signal zone. She read the email. Then, read it again. The billing hold is lifted, she said. Jack leaned on the porch rail. Good news? Emma turned the screen toward us. Apex had confirmed acceptance of the data packet, approved the initial milestone, and released the first payment. No apology, no admission of bad faith. But money moving in the right direction was its own language. Emma closed her eyes for one breath, then opened them. Not crying, not collapsing, standing. Contract secure, she said. Jack tipped his clipboard toward her. Congratulations, Surveyor Wilson. She looked toward the parking lot, where her SUV waited with mud up the tires and a windshield full of pine needles. I need to deliver the backup drives to the regional office before morning. Take the southern route, I said. East Pass is washed out. I know. She opened the rear hatch and loaded the Pelican case. I lifted the sensor crate into the back after she nodded permission. No assumption. No, taking over. When the gear was secured, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, waterproof field notebook. She wrote quickly, then tore out the page and held it toward me. Coordinates. Dates. Weather exposure notes. Badlands Survey Corridor. I have another route next month, she said. Apex will not be the client. I fired them in the politest email I have ever written after the payment cleared. But the new client wants independent meteorology attached to the field plan. I looked at the page. This is a retainer offer. Yes, standard rate. Standard rate. Scope? Route planning, weather windows, comms backup, and telling me when public forecasts are lying. Jack coughed from the porch. Highly specialized. Emma ignored him, but a smile moved in the corner of her mouth. She looked at me directly. I don't need rescue on the next route. I need a partner who respects the data. The pine trees dripped behind us. The air smelled of wet gravel, diesel, and the last metallic trace of the storm. I folded the page once and slid it into the pocket beside my pressure log. For years, I had chased weather because storms were easier than staying. They came, they broke, they moved on. No one expected a storm chaser to build anything that lasted. Emma had just handed me a route. Not a confession. Not a promise too big for a parking lot. A practical future. I'll review it tonight, I said. Safe corridor by morning. Her smile came fully then. Not soft. Bright. Earned. I'll look for the email. Henry. 1 week later, Ranger Jack's report did exactly what he hoped. Apex tried one final penalty letter, claiming weather liability acceleration remained valid despite transmission. Emma attached the server receipt, Jack's road closure report, the flood photographs, and my meteorological timeline. Their legal department withdrew the penalty within 4 hours. Her milestone payment cleared. Her independent firm stayed open. Apex Land Corp lost the right to use her data after she terminated future work under the bad faith clause. Marianne, her contract attorney, found buried in the same vendor agreement they had tried to use against her. She sent me one message after the withdrawal came through. They tried to weaponize the storm. The storm filed better paperwork. I forwarded it to Jack. He replied, "Frame that." I did not frame it, but I saved it. The week after that, Jack called me back to the ranger station to sign the supplemental field report. The storm had damaged 2 footbridges, wiped out a lower service road, and left enough debris in the basin that the Park Service had temporarily closed the area to non-essential teams. Apex tried to request access to recover duplicative survey materials, which sounded official until Jack asked them to name the items. They could not. Emma's sensors were already in her custody. Her original data was already time-stamped. The backup drives were already delivered. Apex had nothing left to collect but excuses. Jack slid the supplemental report across his desk. "Sign here," he said. I included the line about the basin being unsafe for overnight occupation. I read the paragraph, then signed. "You sound pleased. I am a ranger. Henry. My hobbies include closing loopholes and telling developers no. Dangerous lifestyle. Not as dramatic as climbing onto a truck in sleet. That was a controlled procedure." Jack gave me a look over the top of his mug. It was a controlled procedure performed by a man with poor sleeping habits. Accurate. He set the mug down. You look different after she left. I kept my pen over the paper longer than necessary. Did I? You usually finish a report and look toward the next storm. That day, you watched the southern road. I capped the pen. She had to drive through it. She was already gone by then. I know. Jack tapped the edge of the report. Good, that is your professional assessment? No, that is my old man assessment. The professional one says you should submit your retainer paperwork before she realizes you're bad at billing. I took the report. I already sent the invoice. Jack grinned. Then there's hope. 3 weeks later, I met Emma at the edge of the Badlands route with 2 tin cups of coffee, a pressure log, and a weather corridor map printed on waterproof paper. No tent doorway between us this time. No flood basin. No corporation moving a deadline in the dark. Just wind over red stone, a clear sky, and the low hum of instruments waiting to be useful. Emma's truck was parked beside a line of survey stakes. Her new client's logo was taped to the equipment crate, but her firm name sat above it in larger black letters. Wilson Ecological Fieldwork. Independent. Still open. Still hers. She took the map from my hand and checked the margins. You marked alternate shelter points. 3 of them. And comms windows. 4. And abort thresholds. Written in red. She looked up. You really do expect me to call abort? Yes. Good. She handed me one of the tin cups. The coffee was bitter, hot, and slightly smoky from the camp stove behind her truck. A callback to a storm we had survived without turning survival into debt. Henry? Yes? I was right to hire you. That sounds like a performance review. It is a route review. And she looked out across the open land, where the wind moved dust in long, pale lines. And I was right to want you here, before the weather turned. The Kestrel monitor at my belt clicked softly in the wind. Pressure steady. Visibility clear. No storm to chase. For once, staying looked like the most useful thing I could do. By noon, we had walked the first survey corridor together. Emma marked soil access points. I marked wind exposure and temporary shelter angles. She corrected one of my route assumptions when I placed a shelter marker too close to a dry wash. That floods fast, she said. I looked at the shallow channel. Noted. You're not arguing? You know the ground. I know the sky. She smiled without looking up from the tablet. That may be the most efficient compliment I've ever received. It was a route correction. Of course. We moved the marker together. New grand moment. No dramatic music. Just 2 people improving a map because both of them knew something the other did not. That was better than romance built out of rescue. That was partnership. At sunset, we returned to her truck with the completed route plan, 3 safe shelter points, 2 backup comms windows, and 1 final note in red ink. If pressure drops faster than 2 millibars in 5 minutes, return to shelter point B. Emma read it and nodded. Strict, useful, annoyingly useful, consistent branding. She poured the last of the coffee into my cup. The Badlands turned copper under the lowering sun. The air smelled of dust, sage, and cooling metal from the truck hood. Emma leaned against the tailgate, tablet tucked under one arm. You know, she said, when I first saw you outside the tent, I thought you were another man telling me I was wrong. I was telling you the basin was wrong. That distinction saved the conversation. It saved the equipment too. She laughed. Then her expression settled into something quieter. You respected the work before you knew me. I knew enough, I said. You were still checking serial numbers with the storm coming over the ridge. That impressed you? It changed my estimate. Of what? Whether you needed rescue? She held my gaze. And? You didn't. You needed high ground, a better uplink, and someone willing to listen when you called abort. The wind moved between us, clean and dry. Emma looked down at the route map, then folded it carefully and slid it into her field case. Then let's keep building routes that way. I lifted my cup. To high ground. She touched her tin cup gently to mine. To honest weather. The sound was small, metal against metal. The kestrel clicked once at my belt. Pressure, steady. The sky stayed clear. For once, I did not pack up and look for the next warning sign on the horizon. I stayed until the first stars came out, sitting beside Emma on the tailgate, our boots dusty, our maps done, and the road ahead marked clearly enough that neither of us had to walk it alone. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Real partnership is not rescue. It is building the shelter so someone can win their own fight. Green flag. They protect your safety, respect your work, and let your victory stay yours. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this. The end.